Inshallah, in today's session, we're going to begin the tafsir of Surah Al-Hadid, and we will complete this surah in three classes. The emphasis and the focus is on highlighting and showing how the Qur'an wants us to reason, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam into this world and commanded him to guide the people to the inference that Islam is true. So this is why these arguments are on every page in the Qur'an. And we're going to see this from the opening ayah, inshallah. So without any further ado, let's begin. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawati wal ard. Absolutely everything within the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and proclaims His transcendence. Wa huwa al-azizul hakim, and He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. So how does everything in the universe proclaim the transcendence of Allah? Either verbally or situationally. Verbally would mean human beings, like Muslims, people that believe. We say all the time on our tongues, Subhanallah. And angels also say Subhanallah. And then there's other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the jinn, the believers among the jinn. They glorify Allah verbally. But then there's disbelievers, and there's people that don't believe in the existence of Allah. They don't glorify Allah, but yet the verse is saying absolutely everything within the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah. So we'd add the extra words either verbally or situationally. So verbally, I just explained. Situationally would mean that everything within the universe, that would include me and you, it would include all of the believers, it would include the people that don't believe, it would include the inanimate things like the sun and the moon and the trees and the seas and the rivers and the winds that blow and the clouds that are suspended in the sky, the rain that falls down, the vegetation that grows. Everything, absolutely everything within the universe is dependent, and everything in the universe needs something to make it the way that it is. So all these things are dependent. The night, it increases in size. Like one of the verses that we're going to do today, it says يُولِجُ اللَّيْلَ فِي النَّهَارِ وَيُولِجُ النَّهَارَ فِي اللَّيْلِ, that Allah merges the night into the day, as a result of which the day becomes longer, and this happens in summer. And Allah merges the day into the night, as a result of which the night becomes longer, and this happens in winter. So why is Allah drawing our attention to the length of the night and the day? Because the night needs something to make it night, and the day needs something to make it day. So this dependency, we have a name for it, we call it contingency. So everything in the universe is contingent. And that's what it means for the entire universe to proclaim the transcendence of Allah. What it means is that since everything in the universe is dependent, and its dependency cannot be removed except by something that doesn't share that same dependency, so that's how we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that's making everything the way that it is. Okay, so by virtue of its contingency, the universe reveals a being that is not contingent, a being that is independent, a being that doesn't depend on anything while everything depends on it. Okay, now when we ponder in the universe, in addition to contingency, what we see there's variety. So everything in the universe is variegated, and there's no two snowflakes that are exactly the same, and there's no two grains of sand that are identical. So what does variety reveal? Variety reveals that the necessary being on whom the universe depends freely chose to make everything the way that it is. Because if we, for a moment, assume that fire burns, like we know it doesn't, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does the burning, but if we were to assume that it's fire that does the burning, then fire is a non-volitional cause. Non-volitional cause. In other words, fire doesn't choose to burn. Fire doesn't choose to burn, it produces a single effect. And if there was a hypothetical fire, that if you were to walk up to it and put your hand in it, your skin would burn. And then someone else would come and walk up to that same fire, and instead of their skin burning, imagine that it would freeze. And a third person would come and walk up to the fire and put their hand in it, and magically, what would happen is that person would start aging, and they'd age like 2 decades within a few seconds. And a fourth person would come and they would age backwards, and they'd become like a child or a baby by putting their hand in that fire. If that were to happen, you would assume that the fire is alive. Okay, agreed? Think about that. You would have, because non-volitional causes, they don't create variety. What you associate with a non-volitional cause is the same effect, a single effect, and it can't choose whether to produce that effect or not produce that effect. It will happen all the time. Okay, so when we look at the universe, do we see a homogeneous blob, or do we see variety? So clearly there's variety. Another analogy is that if you go into a department store like IKEA and you visit the kitchen section and you look at all of the plates, you'll notice that they're identical. They're exactly the same. The reason they're exactly the same is because they're produced by a machine, by a non-volitional cause like a machine, and a machine can't produce variety, and there's no purpose, and it can't choose, right? And if you go into an artist studio and you look at all of the pieces of art that are decorating the wall, what you'll see great variety, and you'll see purpose, and you'll see design, because all of that is produced by an agent. So again, when we ponder the universe, the first thing we know intuitively is that all of these things could have been some other way, so therefore they need something to make them the way that they are, and this need can only be satisfied by something that doesn't have the same need. There are people that have a statement, فَاقِدُ الشَّيْء لَا يُعْطِيهِ, he's somebody that doesn't have something, can't give it to someone else. And the next thing we see is variety. What does variety reveal? It reveals about the necessary being on whom the universe depends, that he freely chose to make everything the way that it is, because non-volitional causes cannot produce variety, they can only produce a single effect. And then when we look when we look at the universe, we see design and we see purpose. What do we mean by design? Design is a feature of contingent things, that the necessary being has determined the thing to be in a particular way so that something else can happen. So when we look at the human eye, for example, there's a lens. So when we ponder that there's a lens in the human eye, and we ask the question, why is there a lens? So clearly, it's in order that the light that comes in can focus in on the retina to allow a person to see. So there's a purpose there behind that, right? So what does design reveal? Design reveals that the necessary being on whom the universe depends produces tremendous knowledge, will, and power. In other words, وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. In other words, he's the Almighty, the All-Wise. So can you see that this small little sentence, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ, is alluding to those two arguments that I just mentioned right now, the argument from contingency and also the argument from design. So this is what we mean when we say these arguments are literally on every page in the Qur'an. Because the central message of the Qur'an is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, okay, as well as everything in the universe, and He sent to us a man named Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He aided him with miracles in order to explain to us the purpose of our lives, namely to obey Him and to worship Him alone, and that after we die, we'll be resurrected and we'll be brought to judgment, and then we'll be sent to one of our two eternal abodes. So the whole purpose of the Qur'an is to prove that statement that I just said. That's the central message of the Qur'an, and this verse here proves incontrovertibly that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, and He doesn't resemble anything, and He is the all-powerful, and He possesses tremendous knowledge, will, and power. And the next verses now give us more of His af'al and His sifat, like what does He do and how He governs the universe. And He didn't just wind it up as a clock and the universe is now running itself. That's wrong. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly governs the universe at every moment. Okay, and that's what's being said in the next few verses. So let's continue with the translation. لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, to Him belongs to Him belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. In other words, there's not a single contingent thing in the universe that's not subject to the knowledge, will, and power of Allah. يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ, He gives life and causes death. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ, and He has complete, total power over all things. هُوَ الْأَوَّلُ, it is He who is the first. In other words, His existence is not preceded by non-existence. وَالْآخِرُ, and He is the last, meaning His existence is not succeeded by non-existence. As opposed to everything else that will perish. Okay, when Judgment Day is established, every person that's alive will be put to death, and then people will be recreated. And then we know that the occupants of the people of paradise and the occupants of the hellfire will live on forever and ever. But then their living on forever and ever is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is choosing to keep them alive. So remember, everything's contingent, right? So all these denizens of the hellfire and the citizens of paradise will experience khulud, but it's not the same thing, because their living on is because Allah is keeping them that way, and Allah has informed us that paradise and hellfire are forever and ever, as opposed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is intrinsically al-akhir. He's intrinsically al-akhir. In other words, it's absolutely impossible for him to cease and for him to not exist. And the people of paradise and hellfire, it is possible for them to cease, but it's just that Allah will not will for them to cease. You see the difference there? Huwa al-awwalu, it is He who is the first, and it is He who is the last. Wal-zahiru, and it is He who is the apparent, which means that His existence is obvious and known through evidence and through proof, which I listed for you a few minutes ago, that when you look at the universe, you'll see proofs and evidence of His existence everywhere. You'll see these proofs everywhere. So through the dalail and through the evidence, His mutlaq existence is extremely obvious. In spite of that, wal batinu, He is extremely hidden. In other words, it's impossible for human beings to grasp and understand the true nature of His reality. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has will, and we know that He's characterized by an attribute of will, because the things in the universe are variegated, and there's variety, and there's purpose and design. So we know He has an attribute of will, because if He didn't, then the universe would not be variegated, but it is. So that means He has a will, which we don't claim to know, or we don't grasp and fully understand, and we don't understand it, but yet we know it's there. You see, so the makhluk and humans are able to know certain things about Allah, and it's impossible for them to know other things. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows absolutely everything about the makhluk. وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٍ, and Allah has complete and total knowledge of all things, total knowledge. So our knowledge of Allah is not total, but Allah's knowledge of us is total, and that's how that last part connects. Continuing, هُوَ الَّذِي, He is so qadir, and He is so powerful, that it is He who created the heavens and the earth in the duration of 6 days. هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ, and then He mounted the throne, which means that having created the heavens and the earth, He didn't disengage and wind it up as a clock so that the universe is running itself. No, that's wrong. But instead, everything within the universe, from the time it was created, and from there on, and at every moment subsequent to the creation of the universe, it is Allah who governs the universe, and He governs it continuously, and He governs it in a scientifically coherent way. You see? So ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ means that He directly creates and regulates and governs the universe, and He did not create it and then disengage, like that clock analogy would be wrong. يَعْلَمُ مَا يَلِجُ فِي الْأَرْضِ, He knows that which enters into the earth, like rain, وَمَا يَخْرُجُ مِنْهَا, and that which exits from it, and that which comes out of the earth, like vegetation, وَمَا يَنزِلُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ وَمَا يَعْرُجُ فِيهَا, and that which descends from the sky, وَمَا يَعْرُجُ فِيهَا, and ascends into it, like the angels, for example, that do nuzul and su'ud, they descend from the heavens and then they fly back into the heavens, and like the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that descend from the heavens, and the amal and the deeds of human beings that ascend into the heavens. He knows all of this. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ, and His knowledge is not just restricted to the things that were mentioned. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ, and He is with you in His awareness and in His knowledge. أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ, wherever you may be. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ, and Allah is absolutely watching everything you do. لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, to Him belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. وَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُرْجَعُ الْأُمُورِ, and to Him alone all matters will be returned, and that's through resurrection. So along with establishing Tawheed, this verse alludes to resurrection. It establishes the ba'ath. That ba'ath means resurrection, that after we die, we'll be brought back to life, and then we'll be brought to judgment. يُولِجُ اللَّيْلَ فِي النَّهَارِ, He merges the night into the day, as a result of which the day becomes longer. وَيُولِجُ النَّهَارَ فِي اللَّيْلِ, and He merges the day into the night, as a result of which the night becomes longer. He's telling us this to draw our attention to the fact that these things are changing. And the fact that they're changing is a visual demonstration that they could have been some other way. So remember, everything in the universe is contingent. So change is something that we layer upon contingency, and in case we didn't know that everything could have been some other way, when we see that they change, then this becomes a proof, and this becomes a visual demonstration of their contingency. So Allah is telling us that the night needs something to make it night, because it could have been some other way, right? And the day needs something to make it day, because it could have been some other way. And this need that's attached to the night and the day can only be satisfied by something that doesn't have the same need. So this is not an assertion. So it's not saying that Allah merges the night into the day, and you know this because we're telling you, and you know this because the Qur'an is saying so. No, use your mind, and you can figure it out for yourselves that these things are needy, and their need can only be satisfied by something that doesn't have the same need. And so obviously it is Allah who does these things. Obviously it is Allah who merges the night into the day and merges the day into the night. وَهُوَ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ, and His knowledge is so encompassing that He knows the thoughts that are deep in your hearts. He has intimate knowledge of even the thoughts that are deep in your hearts. Okay, so now the upcoming verses now speak about how, after having provided the evidence for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for His tremendous knowledge, will and power, the upcoming verse now orders us to accept the evidence and believe in Allah, as well as believe in the messenger. Because somebody who is convinced and knows about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and yet refuses to accept the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam cannot be saved. That person will not attain salvation in the next world. So in order to attain salvation, there has to be belief in Risala as well. So that's what's commanded in the next verse. Along with it, there's also a command to spend. And spending here means spending in the path of Allah. In other words, believing yourself as well as making effort so that it's easy for others to believe. Easy for others to believe, and so that the religion propagates and it grows. So you have to do your part so that the religion becomes, the more and more people are exposed to the beauty of Islam, and so that they can also become Muslim and become believers. So spending in the path of Allah. So aminu billahi wa rasulihi, believe in Allah and believe in His messenger. Wa anfiqu, and after becoming Muslims and believing, wa anfiqu mimma ja'alakum mustakhlafina fihi, and spend from that wealth in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you succeed others. So before you had it, somebody else had it. And before they had it, somebody else had it. And it came to them, and then subsequently it came to you. So people, when they have wealth in their hands, is because they acquired it. And they acquired it either through some sale, or it was gifted to them, or they inherited it. And at some point, somebody else will have the wealth that you have. So wealth is constantly moving. Okay, so when we're aware of this, and when we know that it's not permanent, then what's the point of hoarding it? And what's the point of trying to keep it and not spending it particularly in those places where we're required to spend? So if we spend it, then we'll receive reward, right? فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, so those who believe from among you, وَأَنفَقُوا, and spend, لَهُمْ أَجْرٌ كَبِيرٌ, they will receive a huge reward. And so we ask those of you who are reluctant and those of you that are refusing to believe, وَمَا لَكُمْ, what excuse do you have? لَا تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ, that you do not believe in Allah, وَالرَّسُولُ, whereas there is a compelling reason that you should believe, and that is that وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ, the messenger is calling you. The messenger, parentheses, whose messengership is established through incontrovertible evidence and miracle, he is calling you and inviting you to believe in your Lord. لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِرَبِّكُمْ, and in addition to that, وَقَدْ أَخَذَ مِيثَاقَكُمْ, before you were even born, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took from you your pledge. Took from you your pledge. So this is referring to a realm. Before we came into this world, and Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, our distant ancestor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brought us out from the loins of Adam, and He gave us life, and He posed a question to us, and He said that, am I not your Lord? So there was an education that happened even before we came into this world. And that education, it prepared us for pondering and reflecting and being able to arrive at the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that He exists. So these things, when these arguments are presented, they're extremely simple and they're easy to grasp, and people are easily able to accept them because of that prior education. So it's a little like muscle memory, so that if you studied a particular, for example, if you studied a particular topic many years ago, like organic chemistry, for example, and then you did not remain involved in that subject, then you'll forget it. You'll forget the details of it. But if you were to re-educate yourself on that topic, you'll notice that it's extremely easy to do it. It's extremely easy because you've done it once already. Or like if you've memorized the Qur'an, for example, and then God forbid you don't recite it for some time, you don't totally forget it. It's there, and with minimum effort, you'd be able to recover it. Okay, so this is what we call the fitrah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ingrained within our nature knowledge of His existence, and then the prophets and the messengers, they come and they inform us of the fact that this happened. Okay, so the question is that why even tell us about this if we can't remember it? So how do we know that it actually happened? We know because the messengers and the prophets are telling us that it happened. And what's the point behind it? The point behind it is that today, when these arguments are presented to us, it's easy for us to accept them, and it's easy because we've had a prior education. So this prior education, in other words, within our fitrah, there's a tendency and there's a inclination to believe in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on top of that, the evidence and the arguments are being presented. So the messenger is coming and presenting the evidence and the arguments, like the sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawati wal ard that I just unpacked for you a few minutes ago, and then even without the evidence, even without the proofs and the evidence, we're pulled in that direction anyways because of the prior education that we had before we even came into this world. You see, so with all of that there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is posing the question to the disbelievers, that what is your excuse that you're not believing? What is your excuse that you're not believing, even though on the one hand the Rasul is inviting you? In other words, he's presenting arguments to make it easy for you to believe in your Lord. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prior to your coming into this world, gave you an education, and He took a pledge from you. So in the presence of these conclusive reasons, why are you not believing? In kuntum mu'minin, if you are wanting to believe and do the right thing, then you have compelling reasons already. So what further reason are you looking for? You see? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so merciful. هُوَ الَّذِي يُنَزِّلُ عَلَى عَبْدِهِ, that He is the one who reveals on His servant, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ayatin bayinatin, verses that are incredibly clear. So they're clear in the meaning that they're communicating because they're worded perfectly, and the beautiful expression, they're not convoluted, and the meanings that are the basic message of the verses is easy to grasp, and it's not difficult or confusing, and their being from Allah, their truthfulness is also clear. So bayinatin here is referring to the meaning of the verses as well as the truthfulness of the verses. In other words, the fact that these verses are from Allah. So their being from Allah is evident by the miraculous eloquence of the verses, by their inimitability. So the i'jaz and the inimitability of the verses, through that, the truthfulness of the verses is clear, and through the beautifully worded expression, the meaning of the verses is clear. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful that He revealed such verses on His servant, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in order to deliver us, لِيُخْرِجَكُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ, in order to deliver us from the darknesses of kufr and ignorance into the light of iman and knowledge. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُمْ لَرَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ, and verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely kind towards you and very merciful. So we also ask, okay, so we ask to those that are refusing to believe, what is it? Like, what's holding you back? And why are you refusing to believe? There's so many compelling reasons for you to believe, and two of them were listed just now. And in addition to asking about why you don't believe, we also ask why you don't spend. وَمَا لَكُمْ, and what is wrong with you? What excuse do you have? أَلَّا تُنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, that you refuse to spend, that you do not spend in the path of Allah. وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, even though to Allah belongs the inheritance of the heaven and the earth. In other words, everything within the heaven and the earth will ultimately go back to the ownership of Allah. So the heavens are clearly the milk of Allah, and there's no creation that has any sovereignty or any control or ownership over the heavens. Okay, now the things in the world are also belong. The things in the world, the things on earth, also belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala haqiqatan. However, people have title and ownership and deeds. So we're being told that at some point you people will die, and the things that you own will become the ownership of others, and then they too will be gone from this world, and then the things that they owned will transfer into the ownership of yet others, and at some point everyone will be gone from this world, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the ultimate owner of everything, even outwardly as he is inwardly. So this is a sharah and a commentary of the statement that was listed above, where it said, and spend from the wealth that Allah has from the wealth in which Allah has made you succeed others. So it's sort of elaborating on that. Okay, so and then it speaks about the variation in people that spend, that they're not equally rewarded, because depending on the level of difficulty and the level of sacrifice, the reward can be magnified, and it would be more. Okay, like in the early days of Islam, before the conquest of Mecca, the companions that spent from their wealth to preserve the religion and to spread the religion, those people, their reward is unimaginable, and people that spend after can never match them in their reward. So that's what's said in the next section. لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل. Those of you that spent prior to the conquest of Mecca and fought, they are unparalleled. They are not equal to the others that were not able to, they did not have the opportunity to spend from their wealth prior to the conquest of Mecca. أولئك أعظم درجة من الذين أنفقوا من بعد وقاتلوا. Such people have a far greater reward than those that spent after the conquest of Mecca and fought after. وَكُلًّا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى. Having said that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to every group a good and excellent reward. So and Allah has complete total knowledge and awareness of all of your deeds, so that's why He rewards on every spending, whether that spending happens before or whether that spending happens after. Allah will reward it because Allah knows of it, and Allah also knows that there are people that did not have that opportunity. So they too, if they spend now, they will be rewarded. So this is why we encouragingly say, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Who is there that will extend to Allah a good loan? In other words, spend with sincerity so that Allah could repay that person what they spent in the next world many times over. فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ. So Allah will repay that loan to them many times over. وَلَهُ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. وَلَهُ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. And they will receive a noble and respectable reward. And that concludes the amount of verses we're doing for today. So if you made it this far into the session, then I thank you for your time and your attention. Please go ahead and leave us a comment below and let us know what you thought about the session. And if you'd like me to change the way in which I presented, then feel free to offer feedback. I read all of the comments. And if you have any questions about the arguments that were presented in the early part of the session, and you can ask about that as well. If you want to challenge the arguments, feel free. And in the link in the description, I provided a link to a 30-minute presentation where I presented the arguments in a more formal, structured way, the formal arguments. And there's already some discussion occurring underneath that video, and there's some atheists that are coming and trying to challenge it, and you can see the kind of questions they're posing, and you'll be able to see that they don't have any substance, and these arguments truly are incontrovertible. So I would suggest that that people have a read through those comments, and maybe even you can jump into the discussion and ask questions of your own, and we can have a conversation about these things. So with that said, I look forward to speaking with you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.